I don't know why that was so sketchy, but hold on 1 second. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Okay, so we are live, and today we are doing a presentation. I have a presentation. We have Fauna Newman back with us. She she has a presentation that she made that I'm sorry, one again.
Yeah.
Fauna has a presentation. I have a presentation. We are going to be discussing the science behind addiction, how it's hereditary, all the stuff. We have lots of information. I'm super excited. We put a lot of work into this. I literally worked on this presentation until right before the show started. I kept telling Fauna, I said, I'm going to send you a copy of it so we can go over it, and it never I never did get it to her until right before we started. So
Yeah, I think there's just so much information out
didn't
there.
take. Yeah, for sure. Like I that was my problem. That was why I couldn't get done, is because I just kept on finding stuff. Like I have like 14 pages of information that I found, that I had pulled aside for me to pull from, so like I there was so much, and then I kept finding stuff, and I couldn't get done. I just kept adding, I kept going back and forth about what was important too. Like I think that was a big thing for me, as I was like, what, lot of stuff here, and I don't want to get lost. Like I want to prove my point. I want to to be very loud about my opinion, and that said, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I want to put that out there first. That one of the first things that I want to say is that everybody is allowed to have their own opinion. If anybody watching this doesn't agree with me, that's completely fine. We are still friends. Like I don't, I'm not one of those people. We don't have to always agree on everything. I don't, we're not
Yeah.
gonna, we're not gonna, burn no bridges or nothing over anybody's opinion. But if anybody doesn't agree, feel free to chime in. We can have a healthy debate. I know Fauna's super smart. She has a master's degree. That's why she's here with me today. I had to have backup with the big gun. So, but yeah, but anybody that doesn't agree, no hard feelings. We're still friends. It doesn't affect anything. I just wanted to put that out there just so that, everybody knows that we're not saying that our opinion is the, the only one out there or whatever. And I'm sure there may be facts to the opposing side. And if anybody has some, let's hear them, I'm always up
For
for it,
sure, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll share. Let me see if I can figure out how to screen share your presentation, and we will go over it. I wish I could give you control, and I think I can. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I figure this out, because okay, now let's guest control. I'm sorry, guys. I should have probably figured this out beforehand, but I did not. Okay, so let's go through it, and you can talk us through it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I don't know if there's a way we can. I thought I could, and I think that I can, but I can't. I don't know how.
It's okay. So
So
just
this
starting
this
off,
is really never used Prezi before.
I used it when I was in
Go
college,
ahead, hold
actually,
on.
for
Can you
some college presentations.
presentation? Everyone can see the presentation?
I can see it.
All right. Okay.
Okay. So, addiction is recognized as a chronic brain disorder, right? We're going to talk about how the changes in the brain illustrate the importance of looking at addiction through the disease model, so that we can have a more compassionate approach to treatment and understanding.
I want
Right here. Oh,
I'm sorry, but I just want everyone to know that Fauna is not an addict too. So this is not just addicts getting together and banding together and like making excuses for herself. She is a highly intelligent individual. She has a master's degree, like I just stated, and she's never she doesn't do drugs. However, she's extremely compassionate. She attends meetings even just to help better understand because she is a substance abuse counselor. So I just wanted to make that clear that this is not just a bunch of addicts getting together and making excuses for herself or coming up with something to make us sound good, because she's not an addict at all. So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. I think it's important that, for me, like you said, to look at the facts and study them and share them so that I can better help people. Um, so, addiction involves compulsive behavior towards stimuli that are perceived as rewarding, which is basically, when we're talking about like dopamine levels in the brain and stuff like that. It leads to compulsive behaviors. You're trying to get more of that dopamine. Um, but it also, um, yeah, you're fine. You're fine. At the next one, not only compulsive behaviors like in relationships, impulsive decision making, all kinds of things like that. It also has impairment, significant impairment. Like the inability to make, decision making, um, behavior control, craving, all that stuff leads to addiction. Yeah. And then there's like we were talking earlier about if there's other facts supporting a different theory. So you have the disease model, a medical condition, and then the behavioral perspective, which is a matter of choice. So the opposing, it says the disease model defines addiction as a chronic brain disorder, focusing on the brain's reward system, motivation, and memory. It highlights the medical nature of addiction, acknowledging the genetic, neurobiological, and psychological components that contribute to the development of addiction, right? The behavioral perspective views addiction mostly as a choice, or a learned behavior. You decide to do it, and then you just keep making that choice to do it, basically. And it underestimates the biological and factors, like we talked about, the genetic component, the cycle of abuse, and things like that. Um, and then we're just talking about, yep, the onset of the brain disorder, an overview. So initial onset, how opioids affect the brain. Um, when you look at uh, initial onset, where it shows the opioid receptors and then the excessive stimulation of dopamine when abusing opioids. And then the progression of addiction leading to significant alterations in the brain's reward system. So the the craving, the urge, the just more desire, and then the long-term impact. Lasting changes in behavior that affect motivation, the memory process, and decision-making processes. And then this is talked about a lot, but this is where it, you know, um, substance use disrupts the reward circuitry. I can't say that word right. Circuitry. Um, but it's where we process pleasure and reinforcement, right? So we get pleasure from using our drug of choice, and then it's that reinforcement of let's do it again to, you know, get it over and over. Heightened sensitivity to certain stimuli while diminishing the response to natural rewards like food and social interaction. So you're not getting the dopamine from, you know, what we're used to getting it from, like working out, making new relationships, things like that. It's we're only getting it from that substance. Um, that's you know, we alter our pleasure responses, and so we're seeking out the cycle where only addictive substance or behavior produces the feelings of satisfaction or happiness. And then that moves on to the impaired decision making, motivation, and decision making. This can impair an individual's ability to make healthy choices, leading them to prioritize addictive behaviors over daily life activities. Addiction has a major impact on motivation and memory. Uh, we can see just when doing assessments and stuff, it's hard to pin down times, dates, years. Uh,
I know that's some just talked about on my claws out episode last night was that like pinning down time, like we were talking about our timeline, like it's really
mm-hmm,
hard for me even still yet to remember how things happen. Like I have to really sit and think, like I have to be like, oh no, this happened, no, this happened. Like, you know, sometimes I get confused and I'll have to ask people like, hey, what happened? Like
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it's something that I noticed. Which, and like, you know, I'm glad you said earlier about not having personal experience in addiction, because it makes it hard for me sometimes to speak up on this because I'm not personally lived it. So I'm happy to like partner with other people to hear their side too, like working with you. It kind of makes it a little, I don't know, easier for me to make that leap and try to help.
yeah, to relate and definitely like
Mm-hmm.
I can understand like feeling like hesitant to like offer advice and stuff because I know some people in addiction can kind of be jerks. Like they can be like, oh, you don't know. I have a friend, he's a harm reduction specialist, and that's something that we talk about is like just if you think somebody doesn't know, then help them understand. You don't have to be a jerk, you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
But
So we talked about that again, the disease perspective versus the choice perspective. But also looking at treatment approaches. I think this is really important for everyone to see how all the treatment together helps keep people in recovery, right? Because there's a lot that goes into it. You have the behavioral therapies, which is where you get the counseling in the groups. Um, this is where like CBT therapies, like cognitive behavior therapy and dialectal behavior therapy, to develop coping skills. Um, then you have the medication assisted treatment, MAT services, which, you know, those are the medications like Suboxone, methadone, the injections like Sublocade and Vivitrol, and then the support groups, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, the Mara groups for people using MAT services, peer support specialists. Am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so. Nothing that I know. I just know that there
um,
is so many types of like pathways and different types of group. There's women's groups and parenting groups and couples groups and like
yes.
whatever your unique situation may be, like there is a group for you. Like you might not think that there's like probably pet lovers groups, I'm sure of it. Like, like anything that is
Mhm.
like a thing, like there's groups that if that's your thing, like you can join other people that's their thing too for support because that's like a big chunk of like recovery is support, community and
Yes.
stuff.
I know there's I have to look it up again, but there's a group near our area for like parents of um children who struggle with addiction and stuff.
Like Al-Anon meetings.
Mhm.
Is that what they're called? Like for the family and stuff?
Yeah. This is a different name. I don't know what it is. It's a local thing, but I'm
Oh,
gonna look it up again. But just
yeah,
having groups like that too, for people to feel supported and learning about it.
absolutely.
Hmm. I think that was mostly the end.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So they're on that last
Yeah.
slide. All right. So that was Fauna's presentation, and I think she did amazing. Anybody have any questions or comments or anything they want to say about her presentation before we move on to mine? Now's a good time. We'll have more time at the end for anybody that wants to say anything.
Yeah.
I think she had a lot of really important information, and I think it was really important that, or not really important, but I think that we did really good partnering this because like you're really smart and you're not an addict. So like I think we have two sides of the coin here because my
Yeah.
presentation is a little bit more like I don't know, like just more like I think we thought different things were important, and that's fine. Like you know what I mean? That's great because I think oh sorry. I think because we covered, a lot because we thought different things were important because we have different perspectives, and that's really great. Somebody said that you did a great job. Thank you. I think you did as well. We have, yeah, everybody, a lot of people are saying that you did really well. I think you did awesome. So I'm gonna bring up. I did PowerPoint.
Yeah. I'm excited to share that. It looked really awesome. I liked it.
I have to first find out how. Mm, okay, that's how. Here we go. All right. So at the start of mine, I just had a little power. If I could get my mouse to work. All right. And hold on, I'm gonna have to bring it on the screen. I got it finally pulled up. I definitely should have figured out how to do all this first. Like now, now I know, but um,
Yeah. You can at the top of your
so,
screen there should be oh hold on, let me see what it looks like. It looks like a play button on a projector where it says file, home,
there we go.
insert.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yep.
so the first slide that I have is just like the definitions. So I wanted to start really basic. Definition of a disease is chronic or acute, biological in origin, disposable, treatable, often caused by genetic, environmental, or behavioral factors. I think we can say addiction checks all of those, correct? It can be and we'll talk about the chronic or acute thing. I have something on that also, but a lot of times it's biological, it's diagnosable and treatable, and it's often caused by genetic. Okay. So chronic disease, so follow up on that, is something that is long lasting. The Center for Disease Control qualifies it for a year or more. So, a lot of times addiction, most of the time, lasts, at least a year or more. It's obviously it's a lifelong disease, but the symptoms of it usually last at least a year or more. I'd say it's fair to say. The definition of a brain disease is a condition that disrupts normal brain function chemistry. Common characteristics alter neurotransmitter systems, impair decision making, memory, or emotional regulation, require ongoing treatment and management, are not curable but manageable. So I think we can say addiction checks all of those boxes. The definition of addiction, though, is a chronic relapsing disorder characterized by compulsive drug seeking and use despite harmful consequences. It is considered a brain disorder because it involves functional changes to brain circuits involved in reward, stress, and control. Those changes may last a long time even after a person has stopped taking drugs. Substance use itself is not the disease. I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Like substance use is causes the disease. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like yeah, so and I think that's something that is a common misconception. Like substance abuse itself is not the disease, and so I think that's why a lot of people think it might not, like the addiction is not a disease, because I think they
Mm-hmm.
get confused about that. But so like um addiction is defined by, or not, sorry, defined, caused by biological, psychological, social, and environmental factors. Four categories. I'll talk about those in the next slide, but the main thing I wanted to read on this slide is this. Addiction is a primary chronic disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. When addiction occurs, these circuits experience dysfunction. In other words, addiction is a disease caused by substance abuse, which causes a person's brain to produce changes that affect a person's health in these ways. The person with addiction reacts to events and situations in life, and the new behaviors gained from these result from the disease. Furthermore, the disease is characterized by certain features just as are other diseases. Some of these characteristics include the inability to abstain from abuse of substance or addiction triggers and cravings, loss of or decreased control of behavior, loss of or inability to recognize the issues with the change in this behavior, which is like rationalize. So like
Mm-hmm.
change in emotion, and I think that is a big one. Is that like people in addiction, you don't think there's anything wrong with what you're doing. Like for a long time in my life, I would say stuff like, I'm 19, 20 years old, I don't have any kids, I want to party, I'm young, stuff like that, like that
Mm-hmm.
just seemed like it was okay. So again, here this slide just says, like, it just shows it laid out, like how addiction affects or checks every box. Like it alters brain structure. For it to be a brain disease, there's like five little stipulations: alters brain structure, impairs function, chronic and relapsing, requires treatment, has genetic risk. Addiction checks all of those boxes. And then for chronic diseases, there's five. Also, it's that it's preventable, treatable, changes biology, it's progressive, and if untreated, it can last a lifetime. And addiction checks all five of those boxes as well. So then I have a couple statements. I think I have three of these in here, and they're just like a little common statements, and then how like the science behind them. So addiction is inherited just like diabetes. So I guess that I kind of put some of these in here so that we can like see how how addiction correlates with other chronic
Yeah.
illnesses, chronic diseases, or whatever, so that because if they're the same, then they must be the same. So
Mm-hmm.
60% of addiction risk is genetic, especially for alcohol use disorder, according to twin and adoption
Yeah.
studies. So like people that don't even know each other in those studies.
Yeah.
Children that have one parent with addiction are 2.2 times more likely to have addiction, 4.4 times more likely if both parents have it.
Mm-hmm.
That slide messed up. Anyways, and so like for supporting stuff, like diabetes, addiction often runs in families, but unlike diabetes, preventive care is rarely offered. That's another reason why it's really important for people to recognize addiction as a disease, because so preventative
Mm-hmm.
care can be offered. And then relapse rates for addiction are comparable to other chronic illnesses like asthma and diabetes. Scientists estimate that genes, including the effects environmental factors have on a person's gene expression, called something epigenetics, uh,
Epigenetics.
there we go, account for between 40 and 60% of a person's risk of addiction. So
Yeah.
in
The study
2023,
of epigenetics is like really starting to be, that's how we were talking about trauma and like how trauma is passed down generations. And
yeah.
that's the same thing with like addiction. It's kind of along the same mode as trauma, really.
Oh
And
wow.
that's what's so very interesting about it with the research in epigenetics and how the gene expression is
That's
affecting us.
hi, sweetie. That's really cool. And so, yeah, like you said, and it's becoming more popular, like the study into addiction and stuff like
Mhm.
people are really now recognizing it as a disease, and they're really like studying it more and stuff. So, in 2023, NIH study found shared genetic markers across multiple substance use disorders. So, in recent decades, a data rich method called known wide association has emerged to try to identify scientific genes involved in certain disorders. This method involves searching entire genome for
Genomes.
I don't know why I said it like that. For regions of genetic variation called called SNPs. Anyway, so I like this sounds very sciencey, and I'm not trying to confuse anybody because I like don't really understand all of this, but pretty much what it is that they search our gene makeup, genetic makeup, or whatever, and they look for entire like regions of genetic variation, and then they have been associated with disease, disorder, condition,
Hmm.
or behavior among multiple people. I'm sorry. In this study, researchers used this method to pinpoint areas in the genome associated with general addiction, as well as the risk of substance specific substance use disorders, namely alcohol, nicotine, cannabis, and opioid use. Dr. Hayden and the research team discovered various molecular patterns underlying addiction, including 19 independent SNPs significantly associated with general addiction risk and 47 SNPs for specific substance disorders. So, like, that's a pretty big deal because that's a really new study, and it's like pretty much there's the smoking gun. Like, they have found now like significant proof
Hmm.
that it's like hereditary, it's in your genetic makeup. But that said, no single
Hmm.
factor determines if you will become addicted. This is one reason addiction must be recognized as a disease so that we can recognize early risk factors and take preventative measures the same way someone with heart issue would because we have brain issues. As with other diseases and disorders, the likelihood of developing addiction differs from person to person, and no single factor determines whether a person will become addicted to drugs. So, like, there's different risk factors, and then there's like all the protective factors that, like, if,
Yes.
and that's another reason. I'm sorry, but that's another reason that like it's so important that we start recognizing this because so that
Hmm.
we can like get this early.
For sure, yeah. I was just gonna say, like, this ties back into the behavioral health interventions, like the ACE questionnaire to look at the risk factors in your childhood. To that kind of helps predict or determine certain
Yeah,
possible outcomes.
yeah. I actually have, I think, ACE on the next slide. But yeah, so like just risk factors is just like aggressive behavior in childhood, lack of parental supervision, low
Hmm.
peer refusals, like not wanting to say no to your friends, drug experimentation, availability of drugs at school, and community poverty. And then like on so predictive factors are just like the on the other side of that. If we could have like self efficiency, like believe in our self control, have parental monitoring. Obviously, like I watch my children probably better than most people would because I know that one slip up, like if my child could have the gene for addiction or whatever, and if she tries drugs, which a lot of people do, it could be
Hmm.
like devastating for life. So like yeah, that's like a big one, I feel. And then like positive relationships so that you're not afraid to refuse your peers, good grades and stuff at
Hmm.
school. And then like okay, so then the next here's just like some factors. Like I said earlier, there's like four groups or whatever: biological, psychological. Stop, baby. What? Um, Environmental and social, and then so there's just like some examples of some. like the psychological is like trauma, mental health, low impulse control, unresolved grief or loss, low self-esteem, and then environmental conditioning. That's the one that I really want to touch on because it's like that's growing up in a household or community where substance abuse is normalized or modeled. So like I think that's a big psychological risk factor.
Yeah.
And like social factors is like peer pressure, family dysfunction, environmental factors is like poverty, exposure, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think where did I skipped the slide? Hold on, I don't know how to get out of this mode. There we go. All right. So there we go. Okay. Well, I guess we gotta go back to the now. Okay. So it's true that the choice to first use the drug is ours to make. So the choice does not determine whether something is a disease. Heart disease, diabetes, and some forms of cancer involve personal choices like diet, exercise, sun exposure, etc. A disease is what happens in the body as a result of those choices. So again, yes, we may choose to use drugs at first, but after that first use, something changes in the makeup of our brain. So many endorphins are released during that first use that it raises your body's baseline too, and then it continues to raise more and more. So you need more and more endorphins just to feel good or normal as time goes on. So this is like a demonstration of that. So like normal things that we do in life, like eat cake, have sex, play video games, talk with friends, whatever, they release dopamine, and that's like what makes us feel good, and that's generally a good thing because that's what makes us as human beings seek out the things we needed for survival. But the drugs, like misusing drugs, especially like nicotine and heroin and stuff, can cause the release of dopamine, and it's 2 to 10 times higher. That's the point I was trying to make, is that it's so much higher than than like what your body would normally produce from eating cake or having sex or whatever. That like so now your body's just jacked up because what a normal person would feel good would make a normal person feel good does not make us feel good. So now we have to struggle to find ways to make ourselves feel good, work extra hard. So NIDA said it better. They say even if taking a drug for the first time is a free choice, the progression of brain choices that occurs after involves the weakening of circuits in the prefrontal cortex and elsewhere that are necessary for exerting self-control and resisting the temptations of drug use. So, quite simply put, once abuse becomes addiction, a person may be powerless to stop this compulsive abuse without help. Lots of people socially or recreationally at some point in their life, especially in youth. That's what makes a youth. That's what makes addiction so dangerous. So then my next slide talks about addiction in adolescence and how like early use, although taking drugs at any age can lead to addiction. Research shows that the earlier people begin to use drugs, the more likely they are to develop serious problems. This may be due to the harmful effect that drugs can have on the developing brain. The earlier the exposure or trauma to the brain, the greater the damage. So, like the peak instance of addiction is between 15 and 21 years old because the brain is still developing at that time. Using drugs has like way more potential to mess up like critical areas like motivation, memory, learning, judgment, behavior. That's why like people think addicts are lazy, but it's really sometimes we are, but it's not always our fault because like our motivation and our brains messed up. Like the parts of the brain that control judgment and decision making are not even fully developed until their mid 20s. Most people have already tried drugs by then. But so like that makes the teen way more susceptible to like the peer pressure and stuff. So like when your brain is the least developed is when the most people try drugs, and then it messes you up the worst. Like it literally rewires your brain to where like survival necessities such as like food and stuff takes second to just getting high. Like you don't care about eating,
Yeah.
you don't care about like nothing. So it's like a little bit of science behind it. I know I've been like really long winded, but like addiction alters the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of that's what I just said for executive function, judgment, impulse control, emotional regulation, all that. The difficulty also has to do with how your brain, when deprived of drugs, so like when you're in withdrawal, how you react to like stress and stuff. And it's usually like exaggerated negative emotion. Got it. So like it really ties into like depression and stuff. Then like the dopamine overload for substances, that's why I just said it causes you to prioritize the drug over everything. Like literally there's chemicals in your brain. Your brain has been rewired to where the drug is the most important thing. So like I want everybody to listen to what I just said. Your brain rewires itself to believe the drug is the most important thing. So anybody who is a child or a mother or a sister or a cousin or a husband of somebody that has been in active addiction and they like that person didn't care about them or whatever, or
Mhm.
like that is why, guys, like really I'm not saying that we have to just take this and say, oh okay, it wasn't their fault and forgive everybody. I'm not saying that, but just know in your mind that it was literally chemicals in their brain,
Yeah.
literally. And so yeah, so that's individuals with substance use disorder continue to seek and use the substance, I'm sorry, despite the negative consequences and tremendous problems caused for themselves and loved ones. That's what I just said, guys, because we do it just simply to feel normal. Simply like we I can remember this. I can remember sitting and like I was trying to stay clean or whatever. I was trying to get clean. I was on heroin and I had like somehow got some. I don't know, however I got it. And I'm like arguing with myself, like, no, I'm not gonna do it, whatever. I'm fighting myself, but I'm so sick. I had a kid, I had to go to work. I'm like puking in the bathroom floor until finally I shot up and then I laid there and cried because I didn't want to fucking do it. Like it's ridiculous. Like it's literally anybody who hasn't been through that can't even imagine what I'm saying to y'all right now. So people who sitting there saying that like addicts are weak and that we make the choice and that it's it's our fault or whatever, shame on y'all. So this next statement that I had is just the next couple stuff is just like comparing addiction to other diseases, just so that so we can get a feel of why we're saying this. So addiction is to dopamine what diabetes is to insulin. So it's not a failure of will, it's a failure of regulation. Diabetes is called, and the science behind that is that diabetes is caused by the body's inability to produce or respond to insulin, a hormone that regulates blood sugar. Addiction is caused
Mhm.
by the inability to regulate dopamine, the neurotransmitter that controls reward, motivation, and pleasure. In both cases, the body's internal regulation system is dysfunctional, not the person's willpower. My
Mhm.
next statement is that addiction is a chronic disease, just like MS, diabetes, or heart disease. Let's make it loud and clear. Addiction is no different. Addiction is progressive, relapsing, and requires lifelong management, just like other chronic
Mhm.
diseases. It changes brain biology, especially in the prefrontal cortex and limbic system. It's not curable, but it is treatable with ongoing care, therapy, and medication. So, it addiction involves cycles of relapse and remission. Diabetes is a disease of the pancreas. Addiction is a disease of the brain. Just as the cardiovascular disease damages the heart and changes its functioning, addiction changes the brain and impairs the way it works. So that's the same, like it's the same thing. Addiction changes brain biology, just like, oh, so that was the same one. And then just again, it talks about insulin and diabetes and dopamine and addiction. It's the same thing. This is the most powerful one, though. Just like MS attacks the nervous system, addiction attacks the brain's reward system. Just like heart disease requires lifelong care, addiction demands ongoing treatment. Just like epilepsy, addiction can cause behavior that's involuntarily misunderstood and stigmatized. So the biggest argument that people on the other side have, this is what we were talking about earlier, is that um like choice. So like
Mhm.
sometimes people on the mild end of the spectrum, I'm sorry, I got confused about what I was talking about, can stop or cut back without formal treatment. That is one of our everybody. The biggest argument is that like so I'm comparing, I was stuck really hard just now on like diabetes, but like a diabetic can't like quit being a diabetic no matter how hard, like no matter whatever their will, like they can't will. So like sometimes addict can will themselves to stop, but diabetic can't will themselves to stop being diabetic. That is the biggest argument that I found. And let me tell you what I think about that.
But yeah,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, we were talking, I think yesterday a little bit about that. Like type 2 diabetes is can definitely be a lifestyle change. And you can actually, if you exercise enough, and not everybody can do it, but if they're they catch it early enough and they're able to change things about their life, they can come off the medicine and not be considered type 2 diabetes anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, so that was kind of where I was going, is that I first of all, the first thing that I want to say about it is that just because a person might be able to manage their symptoms and stop using does not mean that they're not an addict. That's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, so someone can't will themselves to not be a diabetic, but someone can't will themselves to not be an addict too. Man, they're still going to have those cravings. They're still going to have those feelings. They may be able to manage them on their own, but these are like
Mm-hmm.
mild and really rare cases. Like, okay, so on that side, it had the some information about my father-in-law, who is like a borderline diabetic, and so he doesn't get any formal treatment. He doesn't see the doctor for diabetes. He doesn't take insulin, anything
Yeah.
like that. But he has been told that he's borderline diabetic and that he had to make lifestyle changes. So I feel the same way about an addict. Like, if in most cases, if an addict quits using without formal treatment, it's due to like something big, like if they become a parent, if somebody dies, something like that. So lifestyle changes. So, like, let's say, for instance, if you're going to quit using because you become a parent, you are going to change your life, because you're not going to have a baby around all that drugs and all that dope. And if you do, you're going to use drugs again. What, honey?
Where they go?
Uh-huh. You want to go with that?
No.
Okay, baby, then play your tablet. But, so it's the same thing. Like, if, you may be able to manage the symptoms without formal treatment, that doesn't make you not an addict. That doesn't make it not a disease. You still have it. Your brain is still messed up. You're still thinking
Yeah.
it. You're still having those thoughts. It may not be very frequent, or whatever, but you do still have those thoughts. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the only other thing in my presentation was just that this isn't a new concept. All the way back to the 1700s, man, that people have been.
Yes.
Benjamin Rush was the very first person back in the 1700s. He described, alcoholism as a disease, or as a mental illness, I think, back then. But like, he all the way back in the 1700s, way back then, people were saying that this doesn't seem right. They used to think people were possessed because they did things that were so out of character. What, honey? I see, boy. You're gonna have to go with daddy if you don't quit, okay? You want to sit in my lap? Okay. But like, so, this dates way back. And now I know that it wasn't until much more recently, like in the 1950s, is that correct? In the 1950s,
Yep.
1987.
56.
In 1956, yeah, alcoholism got officially classified as a disease. So like, that was way later, but still yet, like, in between there was people like, trying to get it in. I think I'll look it up in a second, but in 87, they accepted addiction, which encompassed, all substances or whatever. And then, but blah, 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 blah. Uh-huh. And then in 2011 is when it was introduced as a chronic brain disorder. So yeah, it's been pretty recently that it has accepted into it. But all the way back in the 1700s, people were looking at this and thinking that something something must not be right, because people are doing things freaking crazy. I'm trying to find. I think there was a few people after Benjamin Rush, like in between. I think there was like a guy that 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 looked at stuff or whatever. What, sweet? Okay.
I like this quote from Mark Twain. I know it's not.
Oh, you want to?
It's he says, giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I know, because I've done it thousands of times. So just talking about, like, trying to quit smoking. Yeah,
Thousands of
like,
people. Okay, here's what I was looking for. So it says that oh no, that's not what I was looking for. I lied. Hold on 1 second. I thought I know they said there was some people like between Benjamin Rush. Here it is. And so in 1784, Benjamin Rush put out a pamphlet that was called like an inquiry into the effects of ardent spirits on the human body and mind. And he described alcohol addiction as a progressive disease with identifiable symptoms and stages. Then let's see. In the early 1800s, Thomas Trotter, a naval physician, also described alcoholism as a disease of the will and brain. And then in the 1950s, which is much later, is Jelinek's disease model of alcoholism, but it's built on Benjamin Rush's ideas or whatever. So like, yeah, it goes all the way back 1700s. So it's like not a new thing. Like, I don't know. If anybody has any questions or comments, we're both done with our presentations. But I just thank you so much for doing this with me. Like I said, I feel much better just getting it off, getting it all out there in the world or whatever, because like I said, I was asked to do this episode to provide some science behind it or whatever, because some people were getting some nasty comments or whatever. So I really appreciate your put on this or whatever. And
anytime anybody has any questions or comments or anything that they want to talk through, I'm available, like to talk this out, because I think it's important, for other people to be able to speak about it too.
Yeah, sure. For sure. Like I feel the same way. I am, I don't have a master's degree, but I have Google and so, something else I wanted to say is that all the information in my presentation was borrowed from different sources on the internet, and I will, there's a slide on the presentation that gives all the credit to everybody, credit where credit's due. And also, I wanted to say too, I know I have some podcast listeners that may only do video or like audio only when they listen to this. I will put a link to both presentations in the description to this episode on my audio only channel. Yeah, baby. People on the podcast channel are loving us too. By the way, I just looked at the screen. They're like just giving applause and sending gifts, or not gifts, but little boxes or whatever. I don't know what it is. But people are someone said hi to everybody listening. We have some time right now to anybody that wants to. What is it, baby? Hold on 1 minute. We're about to go. You want to say bye? Come here. Come my parents sit with Mama for a minute. Hey. So yes, now would be the time if anybody did want to say anything. Like I said, thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm obviously I was a little bit distracted here at the end. He didn't want to go bye-bye. He likes to stay with Mommy, and so I like to just.
That's fine. Yeah.
I don't like to upset him too much. I wanted to say that for anybody who's watching, anybody who watches my show or that was a guest on my show. I never want anybody to feel disrespected. My kids do run in and out sometimes. I just, that's the whole part of my thing is that, we all are normal people with normal lives. And I want this to be, I want that. I wouldn't care if you had if you had a kid in your lap. Like I want everybody to have a place to express themselves and learn. And I don't know, everything. I want it to be a little bit about everything, a little bit of community and friendship and, all right. Well, I guess that's going to do us. We're going to say bye. I'm going to play our my little exit video or whatever. And thank you so much. Thanks again for doing this with me. And
you're welcome back
anytime. Yeah, anytime.
Mommy.
Hold on, baby. Say bye.
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 I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my been ready. Used to hold myself back, my self-esteem damn bad. I gotta keep on chugging.